Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle.
And I'm Tim McNeil.
And Rob Rogers is not with us today.
Yeah, so he is not damn happy to be here.
He is not damn happy to be here. And although we're probably damn happy, he might not be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even on the day, you never know. But, we hope Rob's having a good day. A little bit of PTO time. We hope he's having good PTO time.
Yep.
But in the meantime, you get me and Tim here because we do have something we need to talk about today. We are heading in that final last 2 weeks sales season push as you're listening to this. And for those that know, that can sometimes be the best time for MSPs in terms of sales season. Yeah. People have budgets. They need to spend on those budgets or they will not get those budgets again next year. I know, back when I was an MSP, that tended to be the time where I got all my hardware sales that were stale and lingering out there in the marketplace in. It might not be the high margin stuff, but it's still stuff that needs to get done and usually comes with services attached. So, if I was an MSP, I'd be looking at my old pipeline right now. That would be my first step, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would. So it's funny. I was going to say something somewhat similar, just drawing from what Rob and I have seen over the years is the end of the year, especially if you're a salesperson in the MSP world, or even if you're just principal led and trying to close out the year, we have generally found a great deal of success in November and December, specifically in getting those large projects through, right? People are trying to get them off the books. They need it off the books for this year. Projects don't always start until first quarter of next year, but they need that money off the books. So now, in theory, now is a great time to try and get those prospects through to close over the next 2 weeks here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, back when I was an MSP, those project commitments were fast and furious in December. And, and to your point, we didn't start those projects usually until Q1, but also it gave us some flexibility from a cash flow perspective too, on what we wanted to do at the end of the year. If we knew that we had these projects queued up, it didn't necessarily mean we had to buy all product right on day one too. So, it gave us some flexibility going into the holiday season as well. And, certainly I know that our customers were definitely looking to empty the coffers. For those of you that are working with not-for-profits that are working on January to December cycles, you better be calling them. Those are the types of people that really have to spend their money or the grantors might take it back. So,
and to that point, where Rob and I used when we were still at the MSP, over 10 years ago at this point, we had at any given year, 45% of our revenue came from nonprofits. And we had two very large pushes, fiscal year, and then June, those were, calendar year and fiscal year. We were always pushing on the nonprofits. And that was really some nice cash flow for us as a company to just keep the engine going.
Yeah, it's nice to have those predictable times where cash is going to come in, and certainly for those that are working with not-for-profits and school systems, you can almost guarantee that money in June. The commits in June, money to come in July, and then the same thing as you're getting near December for those that have to spend before it gets put away. Yeah. But some other steps as we look, let's kind of segue into, obviously there's some low-hanging hardware sales, but what are some other steps that you can be doing as you're doing the end of the year planning to make sure you're setting up the sales table both for this year's push, but also for next year, right?
Yep.
So this is holiday time, man. Yeah. All of us have some key customers. What are you giving your key customers? What are you saying to your key customers as the holidays coming around? Yeah. I don't know about you, Tim, but when I looked at this time of year too, yes, I'm looking to close my deals over the next 2 weeks, but I'm also trying to make sure that I can get out in front of my key clients and, depending on what their allowances were, right? Making sure I'm either taking them to lunch or making sure that I'm, that I'm bringing them, some sort of gift. A lot of people usually could take things that are nominal under $50, and certainly, books and other things like that really fit into that as well, if you know the person. This is a great time just to touch base with your customers and start setting the table for 2024 too, if you haven't, been consistent in your QBRs and other things.
Yeah, it is. I mean, one thing that we preach, especially on the OSR side with any of the MSPs that we're working with, is getting in front of your clients now and trying to build that relationship for the first and second quarter of next year, right? And we've talked about it on here before about, one thing that we highly recommend for everybody out there, if you're not doing it already, is grade your client deck, right? Not every client is the same. So like that bottle of wine or bottle of whiskey or, book or whatever doesn't go to everybody. It goes to your A clients. It goes to the ones that you want to really go deeper and wider into. Not that the B and C clients you forget about, but you really want to focus on your champions.
No, well, and to your point with the stack ranking, this is a good time to start thinking more strategically about how you're going to go after your customers to make sure you have a strong selling 2024. Within our tool, VCIO Toolbox, we got this account rater tool that kind of follows the Mike Michalowicz's pumpkin principle, right? And, the reason, what we're trying to do there is, all right, take a look at, we know who our good customers are and the obvious bottle of whiskey earners, right? But
right.
And we know who our noisy ones are, who will, who if I could give coal without you kicking me out of your office, probably would. But you got those folks in the middle of your stack, and this is a great time to analyze those and go, who are my good partners? Who are the ones that embrace IT? And who are the ones that are following my standards? So I know with some of our plans as an organization, maybe we're going to build out our security stack. These are the ones I want to go sell to first. And I'm a big take them to lunch guy when I was an MSP, because you could talk a little bit about friends and family, build that personal connection. Sometimes I wouldn't even talk about work in the meeting itself. That would be on the car ride home. Hey, let's set up a follow-up meeting. I looked at it as a game of chess. It didn't have to be get all the answers right there. But you could be looking at that, and a lot of times you'll find out what's happening next year in a much more casual way. It doesn't have to be, so what are the opportunities? But hey, what are you guys doing next year? What are some of the key initiatives you're going after? Oh, we're looking at expanding into the Southwest, and I think we're going to be increasing headcount by 15 next year. I'm not talking tech at all, but I've just figured out that I've got a new location opportunity and I've got a growth opportunity of at least 15 endpoints and associated things that go with it, right? Yeah. So you can figure out those subtle things and put it into your plan, and in a casual holiday lunch, being human. And remember, that's a big part of what we're supposed to do here too. Really, genuinely, I used to love learning about my customers. I'd find out interesting hobbies that they had that I would have never thought about. I found out about trips I didn't know that they took that led me to trips that I finally took. Yeah. All kinds of good stuff. So, be selfish too and go, what can I learn from this guy that might help me personally? But, along the side of that, you will find out little hidden business triggers that you didn't know are coming during those meetings too. Like, I love lunch more than whiskey, but you could also do lunch and whiskey for those customers. You $6,000 a month,
I'd recommend
a year,
spend a couple $100 Friday. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. We were always similar when Rob and I were still in the industry. We're very big breakfast. We called them BLBs, right? It was breakfast, lunch, or beer. So I was always in charge of having at least 2 BLBs every week. But towards the end of the year, I mean, that was a dominant force, right? I would find either prospects or clients that we had just signed, and we'd go out to breakfast somewhere, go out to lunch somewhere, or meet up after hours and get a beer somewhere, right? It's just building those relationships. And like you said, it doesn't always have to be focused on business.
No, and as crazy as this sounds too, I used to find more people receptive to those lunches in the last couple of weeks before the holidays because they've already checked out.
Yes.
They're trying to find reasons not to be sitting at their desk doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if they can have the excuse of, I'm going out on a 2-hour vendor lunch with you, it looks like they're doing vendor management. In the meantime, they're taking off. But I did find it very easy to schedule lunch a day during my last 2 weeks of the year with my key clients, and not even bat an eyelash that they'd want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, now is that time of year for sure. It's the easiest time, and it's the best time to, as people are winding down and maybe even checking out for the last couple of weeks of the year mentally. It's the time for sure.
So we've covered off on, this is the time to go get that low-hanging fruit, close up those hardware deals, look deep into your pipeline and the things that have been stalled, and get out in front of those customers. We've talked about this as a time to really sit down and rank your customers, and then get out in front of those ones, especially the ones you identify in that middle tier that are getting ready to elevate, and go engage them, whether it's lunch, whether it's a drop-off, whether it's bringing donuts to the front door.
Yep.
Pick your poison based on the value of the client. I want to now go into what can you do as the sales rep, as the account manager, to now better understand what you need to do with your clients for next year. So, what I'm a big fan of, and I know you guys are too, Tim, the lean canvas model, the business canvas model, whatever you want to call it. I was a fan when I was a sales rep of really doing kind of canvas models on any of my customers that I didn't have one for during the slow time between Christmas week and the end of the year. Okay. And for those of you that don't know what the business canvas model is, go out and take a look at it. But really, it's a simple business model where at the center of the stack, you're identifying what your customer's value proposition is. What are you going to market? What do you offer the market, and why should they care? To the right of that, it's your go-to-market strategy. Who are you going after? How are you going to derive your revenue? What are your sales channels? And what are the ways that you're supporting your client? Over on the left-hand side, it focuses on the operational side. How do you support that go-to-market initiative? What are your key resources that you have, human, financial, as an example? What are the key services you provide? And then, of course, who are your partners? Now, I said a mouthful there, but when you map this out under the business model, some interesting things show up very quickly. You want to get some quick wins with your customer? Take a look at their go-to-market model. Yeah. I'll find things out like they'll say, one of the things that we're trying to do is provide more self-service services for our customers. We want to give them a frequently asked questions portal, a place they can go get information. And when you really look at some of the resources that your customer is already paying for, let's say SharePoint as an example, is that an opportunity to take a tool that they already have and show them a way at a very low cost, maybe no cost, to expand out. So you can give a little Christmas gift, if you will, yourself, or a holiday gift, however you want to term it, by really trying to find ways that your customer can optimize. On the other side of the pendulum, you'll find some interesting things too. A lot of my customers are using this model now for security conversations, because framework assessments are great, but they usually look at the end user from a policy, process, and delivery standpoint. There's other models that you can look at like that too, but what they're uncovering in this business model is, hey, all of a sudden I see who your partners are. And I've now established that you've got some pretty risky partners who have some big access into some of your critical systems, maybe on purpose, maybe not. And you've never done a vendor risk assessment. You have no idea if they're doing security awareness training. You have no idea if they're doing any social engineering testing. So you're vulnerable. Just to kind of put a bow on that, we had a doctor's office that was outsourcing call confirmation to the Philippines. Okay, great. You totally get it from an economic standpoint. But they were giving those call center folks full access to the medical systems, not just for name and phone number, but they were able to see all healthcare records. They hadn't shut it down. They hadn't put the right rights. That would have never came out in any other assessment. So what you can do also here when you're doing this is say, all right, if I understand this, am I seeing any gaping holes that I need to get out in front of for a customer? So, whether it's a business canvas model or something else, Tim, I'm like, you got to do something to sit down and really look at the big picture of your customer. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I would agree. We use the business canvas in a lot of different instances within both sales maturity and OSR. And I can tell you, one of the things that Brian and I were talking before we started was just since we came back from IT Nation, we've had a lot of conversations with MSPs that they're trying to figure out what their go-to-market strategy is going to be for sales next year. And I've actively told multiple people over the last couple of days that, whether you work with us or not, you really need to have a plan. And what I'm finding, which has always been true to a certain extent, is a little bit of a ready, aim, shoot
Yep.
Right. Or a ready, shoot, aim. Sorry, ready, shoot, aim. Said that out of order. I think you knew what I meant. Yeah, a little bit of ready, shoot, aim. People are they've got the right ideas, but they're doing them in the wrong order. And I had in fact, just before we started this, I sent an email to somebody up north of the border, and I basically said, "Hey, we've been going back and forth by email a lot. You've got a lot of moving parts, and one of the things that I feel like you should focus on is just making sure that everything is organized and set up correctly. Why don't we just get on a call again, whether you work with us or not, just so that you understand where I'm coming from, so you can better prepare yourself for 2024 from a sales aspect."
Yep.
And that's, look, if you take the time now in those last couple of weeks of the year, like we had mentioned, usually some downtime, to get that 2024 planning out of the way, especially on the sales side, you're going to be better for it in the start of April and beyond.
Yeah, and again, not to continue going back to the business canvas, but the one thing that I always liked in the business canvas is it tells you to look at your sales channels, right? So let's forget about your customers' business canvas, but do one on yourself. We all have multiple sales channels. When I was an MSP, I obviously had my direct sales.
Mm-hmm.
I had what I was hoping was some inbound sales based on how I had set that up. But I also had partners sales, right? Whether it was independent consultants we worked with or whether it was other similar type businesses. And I would use the end of the year to really analyze who brought me business this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the ones that seem to really engage or brought me multiple deals that I should be looking at and maybe using this time too to build a strategy and go, how do we help each other even further next year? This was successful.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we make it more successful? Because sometimes we overlook those gift horses, right? Those things that just kind of show up on our front step.
It's easy.
And those are easy channels usually to open up. You just got to take people from the back of your mind to the front of their mind again.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, what are you seeing? I guess question I have for you is, what are you seeing as far as, is there anything from, we've talked about the MSP side and some things that they can do to get some clients on their end. I mean, switching over to the vendor side, I know kind of what we've been going through over the last, 6 to 8 months. From a vendor perspective, what are you seeing out there?
Well, we were talking about this prior to the call too, right? Things are slowing down.
Yeah.
When saying slowing down, if the item has a big enough ticket price to it, people are thinking very heavily about it right now. Obviously you and I have different ticket prices, right? VCIO Toolbox has, a ticket price. We have some consulting, but you guys are largely consulting dollars. So similar to an MSP selling managed services, those contracts, could be multiple thousands and people about multiple thousands.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, mine is like a typical software where it's a few hundred a month, maybe. Yes, in aggregate, it's multiple thousands when you're done, but it's not all in one shot, right? So I am seeing, just through some other things that I have out there, people slowing down a little bit, some uncertainty on the blocks as we head into the new year. And, I don't think you have to look too far to understand why, right? We're talking about interest rates are high right now. Well, when interest rates are high, people are concerned about what's coming on the other side. What's the economic impact of that? I'm not going to say recession or any of those terms because I'm far from an economist, right? But there's a slowdown, right? What are you seeing, Tim?
I would say the same from a vendor perspective, and just like you had mentioned, we had talked about it a little bit before, and we've talked to a couple of again just people that we met at IT Nation doing some networking calls with other vendors since then. That does seem to be a theme. Time to close has it's lengthened.
Yep.
I think people are just very much in a wait and see attitude. As the MSP owner, they tend to be in a little more conservative with vendors that they work with that are those higher ticket prices, like you had mentioned. And there has been a bit of a lengthening of the sales cycle from that standpoint. What I will say is when somebody signs, probably more now than ever, at least for us, I can only speak for us on this one, man, people are all in and they are engaged like they've never been engaged before. So we have seen maybe not the close ratios that we're used to, but people who are really ready to dig their heels in and get going. which I think we have been guilty in the past of, especially early on when we started the fractional sales management. We, like anybody, right? You try and sign anybody you can, whether they're the right fit or not. We can be a little more picky now, and because of that, we've been getting some really nice clients. So.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you with that all-in phase. I've been doing some things with folks that want to make annual purchases and jump into ramp camps with me. So, those do have some capital outflows. Mm-hmm. And, I'll get hey, we want to get in, use December to come on board, but will you be open to deferring until January 1st or December 31st, for the billing? And, those kind of deals I'll make all day long as they're not too far out there, right? Or can you, if I do an annual commit, can you stretch the ramp camp across all 12 months? Well, again, if you're going to give me that annual commit versus a month-to-month engagement, I'm happy to do that too. So, I think you got to get a little creative on how to maybe maintain some balance for the customers and help get them going, because you're spot on. The people that are coming on, they are all in. Our training people have been busy, getting people going, that are coming on the product. But, I'm seeing that typical end of the year thing. Hey, can I postpone? Can I do this? Because I think everybody's looking to see how they finish out. But at the end of the day, you can't increase sales. You got to spend money to make money, right? The old adage.
You do. Yeah. It's the way it is. It's the way it is. People don't always like to hear that, but it is true.
Well, guys, we covered off on a few different things you can do and things to think about as you head into the end of the year. It's really look at that pipeline, close those deals as fast as you can. Yep. Second thing is get out in front of those key clients, or the ones that are ready to be risen up, and make sure you're making some personal connections, some relationships with them during this holiday season. It's so easy to, you'll never have a better excuse to pick up the phone than other than to say, hey, how are the holidays? You going away? How's the family? Right? Boom. There's your opener. Yeah. The third thing is, is really, the third thing we talked about is really digging deeper into your clients and doing a better analysis on them, so you're ready for next year. So maybe you can find some opportunities that don't cost the money that you can bring to the table and drive some value too, by doing things like a business canvas. And then finally, the last thing is understand that, people are a little bit sensitive to some of the external conditions right now, interest rates. Obviously, we're heading into an election year. There's a lot of uncertainty. Be creative in your approach with your customers. Yeah. Be creative, and if you can find a way that, isn't going to cost your company money, or if you're, nobody wants to be the bank. Yes. But sometimes, if the bank is low risk banking, and maybe you can put a little interest rate on top of it, if you will, and put a little, I can do that, but it's going to cost you, 3% more or something like that. As if we spread it out, those things can creatively get those people in the door so you can get going, because we are definitely seeing the same things. Yeah. People are, once they make the commit now, they are really committed because they know they've made the spend.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, I mean, just for any MSP out there listening right now, Rob and I, we've had a business coach for years at this point. And probably one of the best things he ever told us, and this has been constant from day one of us working with him: you never touch MRR, right? Never screw with MRR. However, there's things that you can do to still get that same amount of money. But like you had mentioned, maybe there's more of a tiered approach in the beginning to give people a break for a little bit, or you can, if it's a project or maybe an onboarding fee, a non-reoccurring, there's more flexibility there. Don't touch your MRR. And even if you do touch your MRR, don't reduce it, just spread it differently. You can, in theory, you can play with the onboarding fees if you have them. That's a good place to give people a win. We've found that to be successful with a lot of our clients, and actually personally here as well. So.
Perfect. So I think that's all we can say at this point in time about what to do. Hopefully, if you're listening today, you found some tidbits that you can take out of this to really close your year out strong. Hopefully in our next session, we'll have Rob back, Tim.
Yeah, I'm thinking we will. Yeah.
But with that being said, you want to take us home here?
I can give it a try. I can't do it as good as Rob, but
Tim loves when I throw him on the spot to do Rob stuff, but my job's to open.
So like you can find this podcast or any other podcast that we do through the MSP Business School anywhere that you can find your normal podcast, to include YouTube. We'll put this up probably as early as next week, and there'll be 2 weeks left in the year. So
this will be coming out on next Tuesday, which I believe is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, December 12th. So
when this
literally 2 weeks almost to the day before
Yep.
the holiday hits. So,
Yep. So now is the time. If you're listening to this, go do it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we will be back again next week.
All
Tim,
right. Talk
have
to
a
you soon.
lovely.
Yep.
Take care.